Mike Pezzullo, because as the former Secretary of the Home Affairs Department, that's a department that looks at these domestic security and cohesion issues in concert with international influences such as radicalisation and immigration. What more needs to happen in that space? Have we, through diminishing the Department of Home Affairs, taken our eye off the ball, especially when it comes to radicalisation and how that can be fed both by immigration and by online interference?
Well, Chris, I'll come to the point about federal accountabilities and the diffusion of those accountabilities that regrettably has occurred in the last couple of years. I'll just come back to that in a moment. But before I do, I just want to reinforce a couple of the points that the Deputy Commissioner made. I had the great honour and privilege in 3 roles over a decade as Head of Customs, Immigration and Home Affairs to work very closely with the New South Wales Police. If Dave Hudson says he's got his best detectives on the case, he will have some of the world's best counter-organised crime detectives working these cases, and we can have a lot of confidence in Dave and his people to get to the bottom of these frontline problems. The key issue here, as wonderful as the New South Wales Police and its capabilities and powers will be, is that there are a number of upstream issues that are really federal issues. This is a national security problem. Whilst the Jewish community, and we've just heard some of the testimonies there, is feeling this viscerally, this is actually an attack on Australia's national security in a number of key ways. The sort of Australia that Mr Howard spoke about when he was growing up in Earlwood was a very different Australia, as Mr Howard himself attested, because it was largely closed off. It had its own culture. Today we're exposed, through the wonders of technology and travel and all the rest of it, to networks of influence that can be both very positive. You get a lot of creativity and prosperity out of those networks. You also get darkness. There are at least 3 networks that really concern me globally. There's the hard left campus-based activists who are both anti-Western, anti-capitalist, and then they segue into anti-Semitism as if you like another layer of their critique of capitalism in the West. That you're seeing demonstrated on the campuses. Mercifully, some of those encampments and some of the more egregious protesting has died down, and I call on the Vice-Chancellors to keep going in that direction. They need to be hard on those issues. And with the exception of a couple of them, Vice-Chancellor or Chancellor Westacott in particular, there's basically been a failing there. Then there's a very insidious global network of white supremacists and neo-Nazis who will look for weak spots all around the world to attack Jewish people for recruitment and also to venerate their own cause, including the adulation of Hitler and the Nazis, etc. They're very dangerous. We've had our boot on their throat for a very long time. They're actually quite minor here. They're always looking for opportunities, though, to engage in the sorts of attacks and activities that will recruit people into their cause. And then thirdly, and this is going to be a function potentially of what happens in the Middle East, you've got Islamists, hardcore Islamists, who are looking to attack Jewish people where there is a perceived weakness in defences. It's very hard to attack, with the exception, obviously, of the events of 7 October. It's actually very hard to attack Israel, Israeli airlines, Israeli assets and people. But if you can attack, as occurred in Argentina, egregiously and horribly in 1994, what is perceived to be a weak spot, you can actually glorify their cause in that way. So you've got 3 networks, which are actually quite disparate, all hating Jewish people for other purposes. So that's, in my mind, a national security crisis that needs to be, the response to which needs to be led by the federal government.